Welcome to Pardon the Corruption, Draft Edition. Joining me today is Brendan Stewart, who has written 3 articles for Raptors Republic this week, profiling 3 different players. And we're here to get his take on what the Raptors might do with the 29th pick in the 2020 draft. Brendan, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
What are the Raptors' biggest needs as you see heading into the draft? Because sometimes the draft can be relied on to like plug a certain hole or maybe look at the future. What is your take on what the Raptors might be thinking with this pick?
So with the Raptors' needs, obviously we saw in the playoffs that they need a lot of more shot creation and offense. At the 29th pick, I'm not sure you're really going to be getting someone who has that high level of shot creation ability. So I think they're just going to be looking for someone who, they can kind of plug in right away and just start, contributing. They also could be looking to the future with a big man or point guard with Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, and Fred all in the market. So I'm thinking they're going to look in the point guard or big man direction, seeing as shot creation might be a little much to ask for.
Yeah, and especially with the news that Kevin Durant is recruiting our man Serge Ibaka to come play for the Nets. So we might be short big men. But so we got the guys. You can see them on the right side of your screen there. We have 2 categories of players, one which are probably not going to be available at 29, but they might slip. And then there are guys who will definitely be available at 29 or are likely to be available at 29. So let's start with a guy that a lot of people have interest in, which is Tyrell Terry.
So yeah, Terry's a 6'2" guard from Stanford. He's an excellent shooter, shot 40% from 3 on over 150 attempts. That's pretty much been his calling card. He's an offensive weapon, only 19 years of age too. So that's bodes pretty well for his future as an offensive player. He didn't average that many assists, only 3 assists per game in his run at Stanford, but he's improving, and you can see those little flashes when he runs his offense. His calling card isn't really in the pick and roll, but he can find his guys on his drives, and just his general gravity allows him to create space for others.
Is there an NBA comp that you'd like to make for him that people who maybe haven't seen college ball can kind of think of?
Yeah, so a lot of people might compare him to Steph Curry, Trae Young. Obviously, he's not as far along as those guys were in college, and I wouldn't compare them to him long term. It's just that style of play that they do. If there was a comp that is a bit more accurate, I'd say maybe Mark Price from the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 90s. He's probably a safer bet for his ceiling than someone of Trae Young or Steph Curry's caliber.
Damn, man, that's a pretty deep comp. Like you went back like 3 decades almost for that comp. You don't see that too often. Mark Price. Who are you going to get next? Gerald Wilkins?
Oh man, get some Robert Horry.
So why do you think this guy's not going to be available at age? Like, are there a lot of teams looking at him, or is his skill set just too in demand for him not to be available at that point?
Yeah, so earlier on in the summer, he was kind of looking like a guy who had a range of anywhere between 20 and 40. There were guys, Sam Vecenie of The Athletic had him somewhere in the late 30s, early 40s, whereas other people like Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer had him at number 8 on his big board overall. So his range has kind of been hard to get a general grasp of, but recently, after his workouts, it's been shown that he's grown an inch. He grew from 6'2" to 6'3", and now he also gained 14 pounds. He used to be 160 pounds at Stanford, now he's 174. So with that increased size for him, that's definitely boosting his stock, because before, one of his concerns was that he was too undersized to be a point guard in the NBA, just due to how skinny he was and how short he was. So that's definitely boosted his stock. And so he could be looking anywhere between 15 to Orlando, maybe even in the lottery to Boston at 14, to anywhere to, he could still slip to us at 29, depending on if teams are still generally wary of his skill set.
And obviously it depends on like what's happening with the Raptors and Fred VanVleet. I mean, that situation is a little bit more volatile than we thought based on his interview with JJ Redick the other day. People thought maybe it was in the bag, but apparently he's going to look at all options, as he should. You know what I mean? It's his big payday. The other guy that you also profiled for the site is Theo Maledon, which is who is an extremely exciting young player. I haven't watched him much, but I know a lot of people are following him, and but they don't expect him to be there again.
Yeah, Teo's someone he was actually kind of mocked as a lottery pick earlier in the year, but he's been slowly falling throughout the year.
Why
Um,
is that?
with him, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Why is he falling?
Generally, I think it's because of that stigma with European prospects. He can be you kind of see it every year in the draft too, with younger players who are a little more raw, who might just fall for no reason when they really shouldn't be. In my opinion, I have him really high up on my personal board. I have him around my top 10, but there are GMs who don't feel the same way, and that's why his stock is also kind of hard to get a general feel for. But I would expect him to kind of go in the 20s somewhere.
Yeah. But the skill set is definitely there, man. I mean, he has some moves, and he can attack the rim like probably like one of the best attackers in the rim you can probably find at that stage in the draft.
Definitely, yeah. He's probably one of the better point guard finishers in the draft, in spite of his age at only 19 years old and playing against competition in the EuroLeague. So that's definitely something that's impressive, and why I and many others are so high on him. I know a lot of Raptors fans have been following him closely, like you mentioned, and it's good reason why is because I wouldn't give him a direct comp, but I really like his comparison to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the finishing department, just due to they're both 6'5", 6'6" guards who are crafty, able to finish at the rim with ease. They have that. He's not as athletic as Shai, but he has that sneaky burst that allows him to get around guys, and he has a good control, which allows him to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, if you want to read more about Theo, check out Brendan's post on Raptors Republic. Let's go on to some shooting traits here with Desmond Bane. I mean, the first two guys have issues with their jumpers to a slight degree, but this guy has no such issues.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely someone who you're looking at as one of the top shooters in the draft. Him, Aaron Naismith, Isaiah Joe. Desmond Bane gets that appeal from his quick shooting form. He has a little bit of a hitch to it, but I think that's something that can be fixed. And just a crazy shooter, shot 44% from three on over 200 attempts. And they moved the line back this year in college too. So that just shows how he's ready to be an NBA shooter. I really like the comparison to him as like kind of like a poor man's Malcolm Brogdon. Just they have that similar build as like 6'5", 6'6" guard. He wasn't really a playmaker in college. He played more off ball, but he is capable of running the pick and roll. He averaged about 3 assists a game at TCU. And he's just a steady player. He does a lot of little things. He's a little older, but that's what you're getting from an older player. He knows how to play the game. He can contribute right away. He's probably the guy out of Terry, Maledon, and Bane, I actually think Bane might be the guy that might be most out of reach for us. Mm-hmm. But like I said, there's good reason for that. He's one that a lot of playoff teams are going to be looking at because he can contribute right away and you can expect him to be reliable.
Yeah, and a jumper is a jumper is a jumper. With a lot of point guards, you worry about how the defenses might play in the NBA. They'll be physically stronger, but a jumper at the end of the day is a jumper. And if you're able to make that, in a relatively contested way, or like, with defense around you, the game does sort of translate much easier. That's probably why he's a long shot to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of people expecting him to maybe Milwaukee might be looking at him, maybe Miami. Just those guys that are going to be looking. We saw how Tyler Hero performed in the playoffs this year. So teams are going to be looking for that next elite shooter who can help you in the playoffs. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to guys that have a sort of higher chance of being here. And let's start with Zeke Nnaji. Is that how you said the name? Did I get that right?
Yeah, Nnaji, I believe. Okay. That's
so, I mean, both from just his hair perspective and his body and the way he finishes, some of the highlights I've seen, there's a lot of Bebe in there, man. there's at least a bit of Bebe in there with this guy, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he's definitely got that Bebe hair going on. I believe he's cut it recently, but in his college highlights, he definitely had the little bit of wildness going on there to him. He's a comp I actually do like for him is Christian Wood. I think he has that similar level of mobility and ability to finish at the rim. He didn't take that many threes in college, but I think he is going to be a shooter in the NBA. He was a shooter in high school, just wasn't his role at Arizona. Um, yeah, I would expect him to be a shooter just because he's got that fluid release,
Yeah.
high release, no really big mechanical issues with his shot. His deal is just consistency and getting the opportunities to put those shots up in general.
Yeah.
His energy is just crazy too for a big man. Like, he runs the floor like you wouldn't believe. He had a crazy stats at the combine. He was running like a guard, and just in general hustles on both ends of the floor. I in my article I wrote for Raptors Republic about him, there was this clip where he would chase the rebound 4 or 5 times, get called for the foul, and then just immediately fist pump so hard that he'd almost take out a guy on the opposing team.
Yeah.
So, he's got that energy to him. He can run, he can hustle. I expect him to be a shooter. So yeah, definitely someone I like for the Raptors. He's probably my 1A, 1B for their big man selection at that area.
Yeah.
I definitely have him up in my teens on my personal big board. So yeah, there's a lot to like with Zeke.
Yeah, the Bebe comparison is a little bit of a joke because he obviously is more skilled than him, but he does share like one common trait with him, which is that a wiry guy for sure, but can have some issues with strength in the post. Does lose the ball a little bit more than you'd like him to.
Yeah, and that's something that teams have been wary of, and why that's kind of keeping him as a fringe first rounder, late early second round pick. His defense is definitely a concern. He's not the strongest player for a big man that you would like. He's mobile. He can compete on the perimeter, and you would expect him to with time and development. But yeah, you're definitely right that his post defense is a little concerning. You'd want him to kind of bulk up while maintaining his perimeter mobility in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Bebe comparison with their wiriness and general lack of control, I guess, but for lack of a better term there, for ball handling and playmaking, definitely something he would need to work on. That's one of his weaknesses for sure.
Yeah, I don't trust big men who don't dunk when they have an opportunity to dunk. He does that a fair bit. Okay, let's move on to are any of the guys we've talked about so far non-Raptors 905 entrants? Like, do they come in and do they have a chance to make it to the big team? Because for sure, the guy we just finished talking about, he's definitely a 905 prospect.
Zeke, yeah, you'd expect him to be in the 905 for a bit. Maledon is someone who I would expect to go in the 905 for a bit. He's also a draft and stash candidate. Blake Murphy talked about how they might be looking for a draft and stash guy. Maledon's definitely one of those guys. Mm-hmm. So far, though, Bane's definitely ready to contribute right away. Terry, I could see contributing off the bench right away. Definitely not in a starting role, though, if Fred were to leave, and we'd be looking for that shooting guard. Other than that, though, yeah, Zeke would probably end up on the team by the end of the year, though, after a quick 905 stint.
Yeah. Let's go to Xavier Tillman, a guy that you do expect to be there at 29.
I do, yeah. He's him along with Zeke is my other big man prospect that I'd like the Raptors to aim for. And the reason for that is he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, arguably the best defensive big man in college basketball. And with that is he may not be the biggest. He's 6'8", but he plays big. He plays strong. He held up the likes of Isaiah Stewart and other big men who are expected to be draft picks and are in general bigger than him just due to his strength. So with Xavier, he's one of the best defensive big men. He can pass it like he's the best passing big man in the draft. That's for sure. At this stage anyway. He averaged 3 assists, 4 assists per 38, 2 blocks and a steal per game. Not really a shooter at this stage. You'd expect him to develop that. He apparently put up some crazy numbers at the combine, but that's open gym, and you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt at this stage.
Can you even afford to draft a guy who can't shoot in the modern NBA?
I think you can, just due to what else Tillman provides. He's so valuable on the defensive end with his IQ and timing. He can defend the perimeter. He's amazing in the post, and he passes. Like, if we lose Marc Gasol, he'd be able to step in right away and provide that same passing outlet out of the post that we're so used to seeing from Marc.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So finally, let's go to the Kansas guy, Devon Dotson, who you also wrote about a couple of days back on Raptors Republic. Obviously, I'm a KU guy, so I know a little bit about him. Would love for the Raptors to get him, and you think he's going to be there?
I think he could be. Yeah, he's we've interviewed him. The Raptors have shown some interest, so I think there is something there. He's a speedster point guard. That's where he makes his money. So he's fast. He runs the floor. He can blow by guys in the half court. That's definitely something that we would need. As we saw in the playoffs, we didn't really have that ability to kind of create in the half court. He can kind of do that to some degree. So you're looking at him for to kind of step in as a point guard. Maybe if Fred's looking to leave, maybe if we just need that backup point guard, which we might. That was kind of an area that hurt us last year. So looking for that backup point guard would definitely help us out.
Man, it's just like, because if you already have Fred and you draft another 6'1" dude, I mean, Boston's like licking their chops, because they had a lot of success with Fred and how Jason Tatum's size and Brown's size got to us, and now you add in another guy who's like a small point guard. It just seems like a bit of a risky move for your backcourt to be that small. And I know we're projecting a couple of years with these guys, but it just feels like a bit on the smaller side for sure. Like I love TJ Ford. One of my favorite players of all time was his couple of years in Toronto. But man, it's risky when you get somebody that small into the court, onto the team.
It is, yeah, and that's something where we have to consider, right? When we're looking at the point guard prospects in this range, if we want to take a look at a point guard, Theo is going to be the tallest guy, Maledon, and he might go before us. After that, it's pretty much all 6'2", 6'1", 6'0", 5'11" guys.
Yeah.
So we're if we're really dead set on a point guard and Theo's off the board, then we're going to be looking for those smaller guys. If not, the bigs are available. Dodson can play a little bit above his size due to his athleticism and speed. So that's something to keep in mind with him in particular. But yeah, definitely I would prefer that we kind of transition into a taller guard era.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still like Dotson in spite of his size. Still something to keep aware of. You're right.
All right, man. So I think we've covered like say 7 guys in total, and 3 of them or 4 of them should be at least be available: Zeke, Xavier, Ty-Shon Alexander, and Devon Dotson. Oh, we didn't talk about Ty-Shon Alexander. Let's finish off with him. He's a guy you also wrote about 2 days ago.
Yeah, so Ty-Shon's actually one of my favorite prospects in the draft. He's been really, really slept on in my mind, just because he was arguably the best 3-and-D guard in college basketball. Definitely one of the best defensive guards in college basketball, according to most advanced stats and synergy stats, in addition to shooting 40% from 3. So he's someone who can contribute right away on both ends of the floor. Not the best finisher, not the best athlete in space, but he can still put up points with his ability to shoot. He can shoot off the dribble, and he's pretty much a lockdown defender for guards for sure. One area of concern is his finishing ability, but if you're keeping him as a complementary piece, maybe bringing him off the bench in the event that we move on from Terrence Davis, then he would be able to fill that role no problem.
Yeah, and I remember the old theory was like, you should, when you draft a point guard in the second round, or even like late in the draft, it's sometimes better to just get a guy who's a little bit more mature, because they've seen a little bit more and they can maybe contribute better. With the 905, that sort of changed. You can afford to draft like younger guys who you don't even expect to be with the club, but keep a close eye on them. Like that's got to have changed the dynamics and how you approach some of these guys and how you evaluate their ages.
Absolutely. And I've always been of the mindset that age really shouldn't matter as much as it does. Take a look at Brandon Clark, for example, from Vancouver. He went to Memphis, 23 years old. He was arguably the 3rd top 3 rookie last year. And he was just amazing on both ends of the floor. So yeah, if you're looking at age as a factor, you can bring guys in, put them in the 905, or depending on their skill set, just bring them right to the show right away.
Yeah. It's a nice little team to have there to develop players. Well, Brandon, man, thank you for joining, and we'll see you after the draft so we can evaluate like who the Raptors picked and dive deep into that person.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.